Anytime you live by your highest value, your self-worth goes up. Anytime you live by lower values, your self-worth goes down. That's why I learned a long time ago, don't waste your time on anything but the highest priority in your life. Find out what that is and organize your life wisely to fulfill that, and delegate the rest to people who are inspired to do what you delegate, so you never have to micromanage them.
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, where lifelong learning takes center stage. This is a show for leaders who have an insatiable appetite for growth and also the courage to step out of your comfort zone and help redefine what leadership needs to look like for generations to come. I'm your host, Damon Lembi. I'm a 3-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people. Today, I'm joined by one of the most unique individuals I've ever had the pleasure to meet. His name is Dr. John Demartini, and he's a world-renowned human behavior specialist. He's a researcher, author, and global educator. Dr. Demartini, now get this for a Learn It All leader, has studied more than 31,000 books across every discipline, distilling timeless wisdom into practical tools for personal, professional, and organizational transformation. He shared the stage with some of the greatest leaders of our time, everybody from Sir Richard Branson to Stephen Covey and even Deepak Chopra, and his work has touched millions of lives worldwide. We're going to talk about why most people say they want wealth and fulfillment in their lives, but their daily actions tell a different story. How to uncover your true hierarchy of values and stop living by somebody else's priorities, and why it's so important for you to align your goals with what you genuinely value. And that's going to lead to inspiration and not procrastination. You know, a lot of people talk about wanting things like wealth, independence, or fulfillment, but at the end of the day, their actions don't really align with their words. Why do you think it's so few people actually do what they say they want to do with their life?
Great question. Thank you. Many times an individual will compare themselves to others that they admire and inject the values of people they give authority to and try to live being second at being somebody else, instead of first at being themselves. And what it does, when they inject the values of other people, it can cloud the clarity of their own mission. And instead of comparing their daily actions to their own highest values and to see how congruent they are with what's priority, which liberates and empowers people. Can I share an interesting kind of dynamic relating to around that?
100%.
So in 2012, I was speaking in South Africa, Johannesburg, at the Sandton Convention Center. There's 5,000 or 6,000 people, 5,000 something people there. I was the opening speaker. Richard Branson was the final speaker. There's some other sales guys in the middle. And it was on wealth and business predominantly, and mindset. And so I get up on the stage and I said, how many of you would love to be financially independent? And most all the hands went up. If it wasn't 100%, it was 99.99%. Some people had 2 hands. Some people had their leg in the hands. The more parts they had, probably the more fantasy they had about it. And it was roaring. I said, now, how many of you are financially independent, where your passive income exceeds your active income? You work because you love to, not because you have to. And you have passive income exceeding any form of income that you actively work in. All the hands went down but 7. 7 out of 5,000 people. And this is entrepreneurs. And I said, isn't that interesting? Everybody claims they want to be financially independent, but so few here are enacting that. I said, the reason why is because many people don't know what they really value. They don't really know what's really important to them, what their life is demonstrating. And they're holding on to kind of a fantasy and unrealistic expectation about how it could be, should be, would be. I said, I'd like you to pull out a sheet of paper, and I want you to imagine you just received $10 million US on a pallet. It's yours, tax-free. Now, in 2012, 10 million would allow most people to be able to at least survive on that, live a halfway decent life. I said, you have 60 seconds to write down the 10 things you're going to do with that money. You have 60 seconds to write the 10 things you're going to do with that money the second you get that $10 million. On your mark, get set, go. And everybody's frantically writing out what they're going to do with that $10 million. At 60 seconds, I said, stop. Hand it to the person on your left. The person that receives this, I want you to calculate how much of the $10 million that they were given is now still an asset that's working for them. And discern how much of that was spent on consumables that depreciate in value that eroded the potential for earning income. Between 20 and 80% within 60 seconds was wiped out in consumables that depreciate in value. I'm going to get that house. I'm going to get that car. I'm going to get that trip. I'm going to go on that thing. I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to buy this yacht. I'm going to buy this. And so people confused their fantasy about building wealth with the lifestyles of the rich and famous. And the simplicity of deferred gratification and striving for actual money working for them as an asset. Nobody really had an interest in that. They were interested in the immediate gratifying, consumable, depreciable lifestyle. So what people say they want and what their life demonstrates they want is the first discernment to be able to make. Or otherwise they'll keep making pursuits of goals that aren't really goals, they're fantasies. Because anytime you expect to live outside your hierarchy of values, particularly your highest value, you're going to procrastinate, hesitate, frustrate, and self-depreciate, pursuing something that's not really important that requires external motivation to keep you focused on it. It's the most intrinsic highest value where you'll excel. And if you don't have a value on asset accumulation, then the fantasy of financial independence is diminished and improbable. And so that's an important discrimination, you might say, in the people's minds. What I say is important. Is it really important? And I'd have to say, I've been doing value determinations for 47 years out of the 53 years I've been teaching. And very few people know what's really their life demonstrates is important to them. Most people have a bit of an unrealistic expectation they're going to do something that's not really as important as they like to imagine. So that discernment is a great starting point for people that keep saying they want to do something and then never getting around to doing it. Sabotage, the term sabotage, I've never seen. I've seen the letters, I've seen the words, but in actual behavior of human beings, I've not seen it. Because when I discover what's really important to them, they're on track with that. What I hear them say is important because it's not matching what's actually important. They're labeling themselves sabotaging. They think they're making mistakes, they're procrastinating, they're not doing things. Why are they doing this? Because what they think is important is not what's really important to them. And these people really wanted a lifestyle more than the discipline of deferred gratifying purchases of assets, which could be boring. I remember one of my mentors said, if it's exciting, you're probably off track. Methodical investing is not really necessarily exciting. It's simply investing. And it's long-term repetitive behaviors that you just continually to do with the right temperaments. So there's a distinction between what people say they want and what they actually want. And that's the first starting point, to get that clear.
Now, this was back in 2012. And what you're talking about is they don't want to do the delayed gratification. Now with the internet and social media, is it also because they don't want to put in the work to make it happen and have the patience? They just want to find some kind of hack to get there?
Yeah. Immediate gratification cost. Long-term vision pays. This has been proven for centuries. It's like the marshmallow effect. And people who live, every human being has a set of priorities, a set of values that are unique to them, that are fingerprint specific, that impact their perception, decisions, and actions, and therefore their behavior and character. And identifying what that hierarchy is vital if you want to know how to set objectives versus fantasies. Because anytime you set a goal that's not congruent and aligned with what you really value, you'll procrastinate, hesitate, frustrate. You'll require incentives and external motivation to keep you doing it. You'll need motivation. Anything you need motivation on is not really important to you. I don't need motivation to teach. I doubt if you need any motivation to do a podcast or inspire people. It's your life's love. You can see it in your face and eyes. You kind of beam, So there's no way you need motivation on the external for something that's truly inspiring and meaningful and most important to you. So finding out what that really is and what you're really committed to, because your ontological identity, your teleological purpose, your epistemological area of expertise revolve around what you value most. So identifying that is where they're going to begin to excel, because they don't let themselves down on that. It's that when the why is big enough, the house take care of themselves. That's the big why that drives them, and aligning with that is crucial. And then structuring and packaging whatever they're doing in terms of other people's highest value, so their dominant buying motive gets to take advantage of it. So you have sustainable, fair exchange, and you build momentum and incremental momentum towards something great that's a service to people. Now you master the game. But most people are, it's like Nicolas Cage. I wanted to be wealthy, and he spent 150 million or whatever it was, 180 million of his 130 million.
Yeah.
And was 30 million in debt because he had the fancy cars and the fancy castles and the fancy yachts and all those things that depreciate in value. They don't always appreciate. And people don't know the difference between an asset and a liability sometimes, or something that's deferred gratification that builds compound interest to grow, and versus immediate gratification, which compound decays with debt. And people confuse lifestyle with wanting wealth. And I've seen, I know a guy that earned $6.29 million in a year, and he asked me to consult for him. And he had $327,000 back pay on taxes. He hadn't been paying his taxes. He hated taxes, and he loved the lifestyle. So he was blowing through money on the lifestyle and not saving, not investing, not paying taxes. You're not going to last very long doing that. So anyway,
no, you're not.
He was in debt on $6.29 million in 1 year. And what was irony is he had a secretary that was working for him that was saving 20% of her money and making progress towards financial independence on less than $40,000 a year. She was on track because she had the value structure that would allow her to do it.
Can you help a guy like that, though?
Yeah, I did.
Somebody who gets that far out of whack, because obviously they don't know what their values really are, right? But they have habits that are going to be very difficult to change.
Well, your habits are a byproduct of the ratios of your perception, which are a byproduct of your values. So his identity was wrapped around what he had, the toys. Mm-hmm. So we had to shift that. It took 6 hours to have a shift in that. And his first year, he saved $800,000 and saved and invested. So he built up a cushion of $500,000, $300,000 in investments in 1 year once we shifted his value structure. So it's not a matter of how much you make, it's how you manage what you make, and your hierarchy of values dictates how you manage it. So once we had a shift in his values, you shift in values kind of like a Skinner operant conditioning. You stack up the advantages of doing the action steps that are proven to build wealth, and you stack up the drawbacks of doing the actions that destroy wealth. And you reassociate in the brain, so the brain avoids and seeks differently. And it's not hard to do. It just takes methodical step-by-step actions. I do it almost every day. And in the process of doing that, we shifted him in first year, $800,000. That's pretty good for his first year. Within 5 years, he had 12 million saved and invested, not spent. And he simplified his dynamic, and we structured him where he could increase his lifestyle to the degree of 2% of whatever the assets were accumulating. So that means he could crescendo his lifestyle. And if he was patient, he would end up having a better lifestyle forever if he invested and allowed it start to work for him. So he deferred some gratification. He structured his system. We delegated some systems where he was able to go and focus more of his attention and made the most money. We associated some discomforts with some of the immediate gratification and showed how ridiculous it was going to be if he spent the rest of his life doing that. Realized his age and realized the repercussions of that, and realized that compound interest is his friend, not his enemy, and debt compound interest is not his friend. And we shifted that in 6 hours. And his perception and his priorities changed, which also changed his girlfriend. He was dating lots of girls. He was kind of a player. And he got more of a stable dynamic there too, because he was showing off lifestyle, which is drawing in people that wanted something that wasn't really a stable relationship, and they were using him. And then he'd be angry and he'd show off things. And he had to prove that, he was worthy because of the expenditures instead of the net worth. As his net worth was starting to grow, he calmed down his need for show. I always say that if you fill your day with high priority actions that are deeply meaningful and really, really inspiring, productive, and do something that makes a difference philanthropically, your immediate gratification, your impulsive, compulsive, addictive, and immediate gratifying behaviors calm down. Your addictive, compulsive eating, drinking, partying, drugs, whatever it is, sex, your amygdala calms down because you're now in your executive center and you're able to govern yourself towards something that's meaningful. And if you're not filling your life with meaning, the eudaimonia, as Aristotle said, your life fills up with debaucherous behavior. Debauchery is a byproduct of unfulfilled highest values. And that's what he was doing. Just squandering it away.
Squandering it away, living a hollow life. So how does somebody, let's say they don't make $6 million a year, but they don't know what they don't have a strong sense of what their highest values are, or their hierarchy of values. What is the first step to help them figuring that out?
Well, I'm going to divert to answer this. At 23 years old, I was on my way to professional school, and I asked the question to myself: why do some people walk their talk, some people live their life? Why do some people do what they say, some people don't? As Douglas McGregor said, why are some people theory Y, some people theory X? Why are some intrinsically driven, some are extrinsically having to have motivation? And that led me to the study of values, axiology. And when I did, I got to David Hume's work. There were values that are and values that ought to be. And most people subordinate and conform to mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, traditions, and normalities, and try to live by deontological ethics, living according to what other people expect and think. And the few are willing to go against the crowd and be an individual and be an unborrowed visionary, to blaze their own trail and to be authentic. Majority of people live with personas instead of being, ontologically. And so identifying what actually are your values, not what they ought to be, is the first step. And I started developing a system for that 47 years ago. And I've taken millions of people through this process. So if you go to my website, drdemartini.com, there's a free, complimentary, private 30-minute questionnaire that is enormously helpful in looking at what your life demonstrates, because your actions demonstrate it, not what you fantasize or hope or wish or used to be or what you hope it will be someday. What exactly is your life demonstrating is important to you? And it kind of prints that out for you, and you take a look at it and you go, whoa, no wonder I'm doing what I'm doing. No wonder I'm managing money the way I'm doing, or the way I have relationships the way I'm doing it. You kind of take a look at it when you get done. And once you do that, now you have to be honest with yourself. And the honesty is, if I don't set goals that match this, I'm self-defeating. So I have a choice. Calm down the fantasies and get grounded on what the goals are that are real for you, or shift the values to match the goals you say. Both are doable. I've trained people in both capacities, because you can change values and change your life. I have people sometimes hitting 50 years old and go, my kids just finished they go off to school and they're starting their own life. I've got an empty nest. I got nothing saved. I realize I've got 10 to 15, 20 years maybe of working. I got to get my butt in gear. I'm financially. And so we have to shift their value systems. Others, we have to shift it towards health. They've not taken care of their health, and now they realize it's costing them not having a health focus. Others, I'm at a point where I'm 37 to 40 years old. If I don't have a child in the next few years, I'm not going to have a child. I need to shift my values from what I'm doing. Sometimes women will have this idea that I don't want to be reliant on a guy, dependent on a guy, so I'm just going to do it on my own. And then all of a sudden they hit 37 and go, oh my God, I'm not going to have kids. Do I really want that? Maybe I thought I've been lying to myself. So sometimes we have to shift them. And that's simply new associations associated with the action steps that are proven to give you those results. There are action steps that prove to give you financial pathway to build wealth. There's results that get you relation. There's action steps that guarantee increase in business and scaling a business. They're already there. There are already strategies there. We just need to have where you have now a higher value on that, because every decision you make is based on what you believe will give you the greatest advantage over disadvantage at any moment in time by your amygdala. So if you don't stack up enough advantages of doing the action steps to lead you towards what you want with a strategy, you'll keep doing the action steps that give you more advantage over here. And this is why the guy was thinking he was getting more advantage over here, but it was eventually burning him out, paying $327,000 in debt on his taxes. It got to a point where that was humiliating and aggravating, and he was under emergency situation. Do I got to borrow money to pay off my taxes? When you're really in your amygdala, you wait until you hit bottom to finally get the lesson. If you're smart, you tweak it as you go, as you self-reflect, and you tweak things as you go, and you moderate your path and build incremental momentum towards something that's really important to you. But so there's the ways of doing it. But if they start there with the values, it'll give them an explanation of where they're disciplined, reliable, and focused, and why they procrastinate and frustrate in different aspects of their life. And that is a huge starting point.
Yeah, and like what you were saying is, if you're focusing on your higher values, intrinsically, it's just going to come both easy and because you're passionate about it, compared to if you're focusing on low values, it's just literally it's a distraction for you. Right?
Yes, your perfect words. I would only modify 2 words there. The word passion comes etymologically from pati and passio, which means to suffer, which is interesting. Everybody's talking about passion everywhere, but the word actually means to suffer. Compassion means to suffer with somebody. When you're living in your highest values, you transcend the passions and affections of the lower values in the amygdala, and your blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, and you're on an inspired mission, not the immediate gratifying passions. The passions are the animal behaviors. So I would differ on that, because people have confused passion and mission together very commonly today. So etymologically, they're different aspects. One's an inspired state calling you, and one is a motivating state by extrinsic evoked potentials in the brain. So anytime you live by your highest value, the blood glucose and oxygen activates the medial prefrontal cortex, the ventral one, where spontaneous action potentials occur. And anytime you do lower values, you get evoked potentials through the amygdala, which are the distractions, as you perfectly stated. So as long as you live by distraction instead of gaining traction, you might say, and momentum, you'll hold yourself back from amazingly expanded potential. And so if you don't, anytime you live by your highest value, your self-worth goes up. Anytime you live by lower values, your self-worth goes down. That's why I learned a long time ago, don't waste your time on anything but the highest priority in your life. Find out what that is and organize your life wisely to fulfill that, and delegate the rest to people who are inspired to do what you delegate, so you never have to micromanage them.
And that was going to be my next question. You took it right out of my mouth. You got to figure out how to delegate your low value priorities, or whatever it is, however you want to call it. How do you go about doing that? I mean, how do you go about finding the right people and basically understanding that that's something that intrinsically is exciting for them, so you don't have to micromanage them anymore?
I leave for Japan in a couple of days, and I'm going to train 100 consultants over there on that very question, because they deal with the larger corporations in Japan, and they're dealing with hiring, and troubleshooting and finding people to do things for delegation. Nobody goes to work for the sake of a company. That's a hard reality that most people don't get. They go to work to fulfill what they value most. And to the degree that they can see how their job description and action steps they do every day and the primary vision, mission, and the primary objectives of the company fulfill that highest value, they're engaged. And if they're engaged, their heart's there. As Peter Lynch once said when he was trying to pick stocks and went up on Wall Street back in the 90s, he said, after I've done my quantitative and technical analysis, I go fly on the jet over to where the headquarters of the companies I'm considering, and I go walk around and I meet all the people, and I'm looking for 6 things. I'm looking for people that are grateful for their job, loving what they're doing, inspired by the vision, enthusiastically working, certain about their skill, and present when they're working and when they're talking to you. If I see those, that company's going up in value. It's going to appreciate value, because those are transcendental states of awareness that when people are doing it, that's a sign of extremely high engagement. And if they're not engaged, they're going to cost the company a fortune. So the first thing I do, if I'm going to hire somebody, is I get really clear what that job is, and not broad, vague generalities, sales. I mean specifically detailed actions that are going to be accountable to do, down to the little nitpicky action steps. I want to know what that really is. That's what they're going to be doing. Then I want to go and do the value determination that I use on my website on them. I mean, I have millions of people that are doing that now, using that in companies to determine what that value structure of that individual is. And they go over it with them and confirm it. Then they do a questionnaire. It takes maybe 15 minutes. And this is gold mine. I mean, an absolute gold mine. That's why people have me come over there and teach 100 of them over there. Because what it is it's asking a simple question. How specifically is this job duty, this action step that you're doing on a daily basis, how is it helping you fulfill your top value, your second highest value, your third highest value? If they look at me and they go, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think about it. They're disconnected. That means they're going to need external motivation to keep them doing that, because they don't see an intrinsic calling for that. But if they go and can rattle off fluently how it's going to help them do what they really love to do in their highest value, if I see congruency between the job description and their highest value, and fluency in their ability to say how it's going to help them, and they're enthused and engaged doing it, I can guarantee they're going to produce for you. I've been doing this a long time. 4+, almost 5 decades. I can predict in advance their productivity level by their congruency level. The more congruent and fluent they are, the higher engagement they're going to have in doing that action, and the less you'll have to ever motivate them, remind them, train them, because it's something meaningful to them, and whatever is meaningful to them, they feel is their purpose. It's what feel their identity revolves around, and it's what they want to excel in learning about. So they'll be self-learned, Theory Y people, McGregor called it. It's Theory Y. What he called Theory Y is that same exact thing. If I see a 75 or 80% or more congruency, they're hireable. If you measure all the other variables when you hire, background checks and other things. But if I don't see 75%, I don't waste my time. They're not going to be.
Let me ask you this. I'm listening into this, and I'm a founder of a 250 person company. So I have 250 employees. Let's say my culture is decent. We haven't really scaled to the way we wanted to, but we're not doing terribly. But I'm listening to what you're saying is like, I want to get this in and start this now. And what do? You just go in, have everybody go through it, and then if you find out that they're less than 70% congruent, either ship them out, or see if there's other areas where we could focus on their strengths?
There's 2 or 3 things. I just popped in my head when you said that. InvestTech had me do 250 people in one morning.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a 4-hour adventure. And we basically identified their values and then took their job descriptions and measured in advance the congruency level. That took about just under an hour. Then the last 3 hours, on anybody that had a low congruency or a moderate congruency or high, we increased the congruency by making links. So there's a certain set of questions, which is basically how specifically is doing this action going to help you fulfill what's most meaningful. If you can't see it, you're not engaged. So we can re-engage them by making new links neuroplastically in the brain and re-fire them up and take people from somebody that's under 75 up into the 90s or even higher, and take somebody that's 80 right up into 97 if we do the exercise. In 4 hours, we can do that. I did 250 people by myself. I've done even more when I have facilitators that I've trained that come in and help me with that. So you can scale up pretty quick. I mean, if you did 250 people a day, you could scale up pretty quick. And you could do probably 500 people a day doing it. So you can scale it up. I've done that. But it's a matter of getting them engaged. When they can't see how what they're doing is going to help them fulfill what's most meaningful to them, they're going to want breaks. They're going to want time off. They're going to want raises. You're going to have to motivate them. They're going to have long distractions at the coffee place. They're going to have more sickness, more distractions. The symptoms of business are a sign of disengagement and uninspired people. And so the manager hired those people. And if they don't know how to screen them according to what engagement level, and if they go by only what the people say they can do and what they've done, this is not a very smart hiring process. So I think this is a great tool that everybody could benefit by. I know it can benefit by. There's no doubt in my mind. So it's a matter of taking, the whole thing takes about 45 minutes in all. And you can do large numbers at a time.
And for something like that, they could just go to your website and contact you to maybe have you run them through that exercise?
Yep, easily. I've trained about 2,000 facilitators and consultants that are doing this in different parts of the world, just on that one procedure.
Because what you're talking about is if people aren't engaged and they don't know what their purpose doesn't align with, let's say, what the organization's doing, you are going to get sick more, and it's more of just like a paycheck job. You're just kind of showing up, and and people don't really care.
I got to share a story. This will probably
let's do it.
Irritate some people. I was asked to speak at IBM a number of years back, and the lady that invited me to come and speak had a selected topic they wanted me to do, and I kind of worked with it to try to get it a little bit more inspiring to me. And so I get there, and there's 400 people in the room. They were doing it in groups. 400 people, they could fit into this thing. It was packed. And I got behind stage, and I came up on stage, and I said, how many of you can't wait to get up in the morning and work for one of the greatest companies in the world, IBM?
Nothing.
One hand went up. One hand went up. It was the overweight regional manager in the front row that didn't even look around and see that nobody else had the hand up.
Yeah.
And I thought, I hit the microphone. I said, can you all hear me? And they go, yeah. I said, this can't be. I said, I'm going to start over again. I got back off the stage, walked back on the stage. How many of you can't wait to get up in the morning and work for one of the greatest companies in the world, IBM? And this is quite a ways back when IBM still had clout, right?
Yeah.
And one hand. But this time the manager turned around, and the look on his face when he saw nobody's hands up and nobody could look him in the eyes, I went, whoa. So, excuse my French.
So what'd you do with that room?
Well, excuse my French, but
yeah.
I looked at the back of the room and saw this lady going, oh my God, Demartini's about to let loose.
Yeah. And, good. I love it. I love it.
And I said, well, the topic I was asked to speak about is not the topic that I'm going to speak about today, because what I'm here toward, and I may never be asked here again, but I'm going to speak on what I see needs to be spoken about. And my name of my program is Shit or Get Off the Pot. That's the name of the title.
Oh, I love it. Did the woman just fall off her chair when you said that?
She literally covered up her head and went, oh my God, I'm fired. I've lost my job. Yeah. This is the end of my world.
And you were probably brought in to do some rah.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I don't do rah, but I was doing a topic that's not what the issue was.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But okay. Anyway, so shit or get off the pot.
So shit or get off the pot. Now the whole place went into laughter. The manager even laughed. So it was inappropriate, but appropriate. And I got down off the stage and I went in the aisles and into talking to people. And I said to him this, I said, if you're not inspired and you can't wait to get up in the morning and go to work, you're costing your life, your health, your future, and this company. So today we're going to decide whether you're on board or off board. And if you're not inspired about working here and doing your job and you can't wait to get up in the morning and do it, you're costing the company and costing your life. And your security and survival mentality is draining the company. So that's what was happening this is in the 80s, actually. So I said, so I went around there and I fired this group up. I mean, it wasn't a rah-rah. It was just kick ass. Excuse my expression. I was kicking ass. Ass means awakened spiritual service, And so I was really kicking it. When I got through.
Oh, wait. Before you got through, what were some of the things that were getting them all pumped up? Can you give us an example?
They were making a decision. See, they're holding on to comfort and security and survival.
And
some of them were contemplating their own careers, their own businesses. They were bored. But the money was decent. But the company was hurting, and they were going to have to lay some people off anyway. And so they came in to try to do something to rally it up, right? So when I got through, 75 people gave their notice that day.
Good.
75. That was about 20% of the workforce gave their notice. Now
covered your speaking fee.
Yeah. Well, I got paid up front.
No, I mean that covered it because they needed to do layoffs anyways, right? So they got those people out. They didn't want to be there.
So what was amazing was I was supposed to go to lunch with a lady afterwards. She canceled it. She didn't want to look at me. I had to get a taxi home. Taxiing back to my office because it was just about 2 miles away, 3 miles maybe. And I walked out of there and I knew that they needed it. But it was inappropriate in her eyes. Of course, she was sitting there in security and one of the people that was in security at the time. So anyway, I didn't hear from her. I didn't hear from anybody for about 2 weeks. And there's a part of my mind that was like, what's going to happen from this? I knew it was integral. I knew if I didn't do it, we're just wishy-washy white painting stuff. And I figured just go with it. And if I never get called by IBM or never get referrals, I really don't care. I got plenty of business. So 2 weeks later, I got an actual envelope mail, but back in those days, in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. And it was from the regional manager. And my assistant heard about what happened. And my assistant came back and she said, can I watch you open this? I want to be there when you open this to see what this letter says. Dear Dr. Demartini, thank you for the transformation at IBM. Your presentation was spot on, and you transformed the vitality, energy, and we are on fire. The people that we had planned on having to lay off, 70% of those people are the ones that quit.
That's what I'm saying.
You saved us a fortune, and the people that are now on board and hiring, we're screening, and we are on fire, and we've already started making profits. It's already amazing difference what's happened. And beautiful letter. I mean, it was like more than I was expecting. I thought, that was interprofessional. You didn't stick to the script. You didn't do this. I was expecting some of that, reprimand stuff because I just went for it. I just said, and if I was in this boat, this is what I would do.
And you went with your, like all the stuff you talk about, you went with your authentic self.
I went with my authentic self because the truth is that's what it needed. It really was obvious. I mean, it was dense. You put a knife in the room, it would just sit there. It was so dense. And the regional manager was oblivious to it. So anyway, the lady...
Hopefully she was part of the 75 that ended up getting let go anyways. No?
The lady had a headache all afternoon, was nauseated and almost sick that night, assuming she was going to lose her career, was bitter, angry at me, trying to think of all kind of repercussions of what she would do to me if something happened to her. I mean, it was just victim mentality.
Yeah.
And she was afraid to go to work the next day, and just not feeling well, almost unconsciously creating sickness to not have to deal with what was about to happen, she thought. But nothing happened when she went to work. There was no negative repercussion. In fact, the place was buzzing because people were now giving themselves permission to leave and go on, and they were excited about what they were going to do. And I told people, I said, if you're not doing what you really love to do, you're holding your life, your vitality, your energy, your creativity, your innovation back, and you're doing it for comfort. You're in survival mode, and that kills companies and kills your own life. Give yourself permission to shine, not shrink, to radiate, not gravitate, and to bloom and not, go into gloom. So she came to my office personally when she got a raise and a promotion after doing soul searching and finding out, do I really want to be there or not? And she came to the conclusion, I really do. And so she came on board, got a promotion, came to my office and humbled herself and said, I couldn't understand you did this. I was so scared of everything else, but thank you. She gave me a big hug, said, thank you. What I learned from this is how important it is to be myself and to not worry about what other people think and to really do a quality job and go and serve people and focus on a real mission instead of sitting and living in security and thinking that they're going to take care of it. I had a 72-year-old woman that worked for me one time. And I asked her, I said, so how was your day, Betty? And she said, I was busy. I said, well, you could be doing your hair and doing curlers and doing your makeup all day and be busy. How productive were you? And she said, well, I think I was productive. And I said, we're going to do something, a little exercise, Betty. I said, how much does it cost me to have you working for me? And she was, she thought of her salary. That an employee always thinks of their salary. Don't think of all the cost. She said, well, my salary is around $72,000. I said, great. And what about the space you use? That's 1/6 of the space and of this area, and so that's another about $1,000 to $1,200. And then what about the furniture and the depreciation schedules and the telephone calls and electricity and the plant maintenance?
Your time having to deal with her,
the time of your heirs and cost and the time off and vacations and bonuses and it turned out 3 3/4 what her fee was when we got it all the fees down. I said, now that is break even, baby. That's break even. That's what it costs me to have you here. I don't get any profit until I go beyond that. Now, let's take what the average profit in the business was, which was around 40% at the time.
Well, what did she say when you told her that?
Well, she said, do I still have a job? And I said, okay.
Let's think about it. Yeah.
The average of my whole company is 40% profit. So I got to take what that is and put 40% profit on top of that. And she goes, whoa. I said, now, anything less than that, you're a substandard employee. Anything above that, you're an exceptional employee. Job security has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you producing more than you cost. You're always in command of that. If you produce more than your cost, you'll never worry about being fired here. You'll always have a job here as long as you can do that. But if you can't do that, why would I rescue you? And because you've been with me a long time? No, it's not. I don't keep you here just because you've been here. I keep you here because you produce more than you cost and more than the average cost, and you're an exceptional employee. Otherwise, you're substandard. I hit her with reality. When she did that and got that, her productivity went up to make sure she always had job security. She knew exactly what it was. Because most employees think, well, you make all this money, and so they get entitled and they don't get grounded about what it really cost as if they were an entrepreneur, what it really is involved in it. And the sometimes things you have to think about going home, paying bills and, figuring out things, making decisions, stuff. They don't know. So when I got through that, so I really believe, even though some people don't want this to happen, they don't want them to know how much they're making. I really believe if they know the facts, they will be more dedicated and produce more if they know the ground and they know what it is, because they're now participating in the company. And she increased her productivity. And whenever I ask her, how you doing? She said, I've got a net profit of $1,300 today for you. I said, now you're talking.
I love it, because what you're doing right there is you're making it crystal clear, whether it's around expectations or you're giving insight into what's inside your head, right? What you're thinking about, because
you're not repressing. You're not repressing.
Yeah. You're not repressing, because I've run my business for 30 years. We got about 75, 80 employees, but, and I have a really good team, but they don't, they don't know. Sometimes it's hard. You go home, you have these ups and downs, you have these thoughts, you got to worry about payroll, things coming up, clients. And I really appreciate what you're saying, because the more crystal clear you can make things for people, the better. And there's going to be some people who will disagree with you, not me, but some people will disagree and say, well, that's the owner's responsibility to set people up for success all the time. Dr. Demartini, I really believe it's the employees got to take ownership of their own career as well, right? Their personal growth. You can't sit on your heels and just expect things to happen for you, for your life to happen.
The thing is,
to you,
whatever's highest on your value is your ontological identity. You identify yourself by what you value most. Guarantee it. I've been doing it 47 years. So if your highest value is being a mother and you're raising 3 kids and you're there with your kids all day long and taking them places, doing everything else, if you ask that woman, who are you? She'll say, I'm a mother. Her husband, who may be an entrepreneur, who has the same 3 kids, if you ask him, who are you? He'll say, I'm an entrepreneur. He won't say I'm a father. He'll say I'm an entrepreneur. His father will be second. The hierarchy of your values dictates your identity. And so if people feel that they're doing what they love and it's inspiring to them, they identify with it as if it's their company. And they have a different perspective on it. I was sitting at the Hyatt Hotel in Toronto one time. And I was looking out the window on a Sunday morning. I was doing a seminar over the weekend. I was about to go to day 2 presenting it. And I looked out the window and there was this guy that came into this church. There's a church across the street. And there was a back entrance for people that actually worked there. And I watched him come in, and the sidewalk was full of papers and trash and bottles from people partying the night before. And it was not really presentable to enter the church. You know what I mean? It was not very appealing.
I get it.
Kind of filthy. And he walked in and he walked to the gate and didn't even notice it, didn't pay attention. And then a lady came in, a little older, and picked up every one of those trash things, looked and went around and made sure the entrance of the church was presentable, and came in and put it all in the trash and took care of it. That's the difference between somebody who's got a job and somebody who's got a career. The difference between somebody who's disengaged and engaged. Somebody has it low in their value and high in their value. The lady identifies that it's like her yard or it's her house. And he just says it's the job. When it's first person, they're engaged. When it's third person, they're disengaged. That job I have versus my work, my career, my company. They'll call it my company when they're engaged.
I totally get what you're saying. You brought this up a little earlier. I was listening to it yesterday on your podcast. You talked about it. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about a little bit is victim mentality. Because that's something you see quite a bit in individuals personally and professionally. So take us through a little bit about your thought process on somebody comes to you and they want to share with you their victim story.
Anytime you're not engaged and inspired in doing what you really love to do and what's highest on your value, and you're doing lower party things out of duty, not design, extrinsic, not intrinsic, you're going to be in your amygdala. Your amygdala wants to avoid predator and seek prey. It wants to avoid challenge and seek support. It wants to avoid negative and seek positive. It's polarizing. It divides. It's a positive feedback loop that dramatizes things in order to capture prey and avoid predator. It generalizes and distorts. It's a survival system. The executive center puts things and integrates pairs of opposites and unifies things and gets integration. It's the integration center, the medial prefrontal cortex. So when you're living by your highest values, you integrate and you embrace pain and pleasure in the pursuit of a purpose. When you are living by lower values, you disintegrate and you try to avoid pain and seek pleasure, avoid difficulty, seek ease, avoid anything that challenges you and seek only things that support you. But as the Buddha says in Buddhist times, the desire for that which is unattainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is the source of human suffering. So anytime you're looking for a fantasy and trying to avoid a nightmare or a pleasure and not get a pain, you're trying to divide and separate that which is inseparable. And therefore, when it comes, the side you don't want, it's distressful. And it seems like you're a victim of this thing that you keep trying to escape. And that's how you become a victim of your history instead of a master of your destiny. A master of their destiny is pursuing something and embracing pain and pleasure in the pursuit of it, mitigating risks with strategic planning, calming down fantasies and going after true objectives and thinking in advance with foresight all the things that go wrong and have a prepared answer for each one so they go through the things without reaction, more proaction. And so a person that's automatically looking for a one-sided world has a fantasy about how life's supposed to be, an unrealistic expectation, and then life becomes a victim. Life becomes a nightmare. And they label things trauma because they haven't seen how it serves them and how it's breaking their addiction to the fantasies they're pursuing. You'd be surprised how many entrepreneurs are pursuing fantasies in their career as entrepreneurs. Fantasies about what the market wants, fantasies about how they're going to make money, fantasies about how they're going to hire people and they're just going to do things. Instead of actually ground themselves and have foresight and not just hindsight and anticipate and use their brains and intelligence wisely to qualify the people, make sure they're clear about the things, the strategies, the job descriptions, and get on and demonstrate and exemplify what it's like to live by priority so you can exemplify that as the greatest teacher for the people below. And then hire people that really are absolutely inspired to do that. Steve Jobs had a great video, if you've probably seen it online, talking about how he hired people. Basically, if you're not inspired to work for Apple, stay away. If this isn't your dream and this is not your inspiration and you don't have the skills and they're going to compete and push, don't come here. And that's if it really means something. When the why is big enough, people find the way to get things accomplished. They have a big enough reason for doing it. You want people that have a why to do what it is you want done. And when they're congruent and aligned with their values, that's what they have. And I've watched what happens. We've all been in a restaurant or a department store or some store where somebody is absolutely inspired and engaged in what they're doing. And you want to refer to them. You want to come back. You want to buy things from them. And others that it's a bother. And they're basically ducks and eagles. We've all had that. I met a guy. I was in New York. I was living in New York in Trump Tower up until I bought my ship. And sometimes they get a taxi. Sometimes we had a car service, sometimes a taxi if it's just a short distance. And sometimes you get in the taxi and you got a filthy, smelly taxi. You don't even want to get in. Next, I'll just go to the next one. And I'll say, thank you, but no thank you. And they'll be angry at you for them not respectfully taking care of their car. In Japan, you'd never see that. In Japan, they got doilies and it's clean and they have respect for themselves and it's different. But in New York City, they don't even own the car. It's just they get a tag and all that kind of thing. But one day I got in this car where this guy was there and the thing was immaculate. It wasn't a new car. It was just immaculate. It smelled fantastic. And he said, here's my card. Anywhere you need to go, anytime, 24 hours a day, I'm there for you. You need a group of people transported? I got a team of quality people there for you. My grandfather was a taxi driver. My father was a taxi driver. My dream was to be a taxi driver. I know every street by heart in the city of New York. So I'm your guy. Just want to let you know that we're here for you. Any capacity you need. You need water, we'll stop and get it. You need food, we'll get it. You need to be there on time. You let me know. He was absolutely inspiring. For probably 3 years, even though I had car services, I'd still call this guy.
Absolutely.
And I'd show him off. I wanted to show this guy. You got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. He knows every friggin' street in this city. And he knows how to he's one of those, there's some guys that are, passively kind of going through New York. He knows how to get you where you want to get there on fast. He'll put those turbochargers on and get you there. The guy was amazing. He was an amazing driver, an amazing personality, and he was an amazing marketer. And this guy was you had a waiting list of people that wanted to use him because that's engaged people. That's the difference.
He made people feel good. I mean, like I bet you looked forward to having a conversation with him, right? I mean, it brightens up your day a little bit.
I knew about his kids, his wife. I mean, his sex life. I mean, I got to know all about this guy. He was a cool guy. But that's the difference. And that there's a lady in this hotel right here, an Asian lady, and there's a guy who's the manager here, who's first class manager of this restaurant here, and it's Warehouse 72 at this place where I'm at. And first class manager, and first class Asian. Some of the other people aren't quite as up to snuff, but she will go out of her way, make sure it's done, make sure it's written clearly, make sure it is, and take it back if it's not exact. She's the eagle, and he's an eagle. Some of the other people were average, waiters. And I guarantee you, every time people came here over the weekend, I said, ask for so-and-so. Go to her. Even if you have to wait, this lady will take care of you. That's the difference in business. And people want to grow any business that they are having fulfilled service by. They want to help you grow. They're on your team. They want to make that business grow. They want to be around the best and the greatest. So
I think what's important that you're saying, for our listeners as well, is if you're going to do something, we talked a lot about, highest values and everything, but go all in, go all in and make the best of it. Cause you spend so much time at work, or you spend so much time with your family or whatever is most important to you, and be present and make the best of it, because then you just light up everybody else. The opposite is if you're got the low distractions, low priorities, you're wasting time, you're wasting your company's time, you're not doing anybody any favors. But on the flip side, like you're talking about this restaurant, you're brightening people's day again, and you're helping that business survive and even thrive.
I was sitting at a restaurant in the Galleria of Houston on the 3rd floor. It's called something Oaks Mall, White Oak Restaurant. That's what it was. And I'm looking out, and there's a Starbucks right outside. And I went in there, ordered my food, ate my food, and was leaving, and there were still people standing in line.
Yeah.
I don't know where people get the time for that. I don't know how they do it. So I decided to be a real ass, okay? I'm a researcher. So I walked over there and I said, do you work in the mall? And they go, yes. I said, what company do you work for? I said, well, this particular Zara, this particular person at Zara. Yeah. I said, I came in here at 1:15. It's now 2:15. About 5 minutes after I got here, I saw you get in line, and I'm still seeing you in line waiting for this coffee. Are you on a coffee break? Are you on your lunch period? If you're on a coffee break, do you normally get an hour for a coffee break? And does your manager know that? I started drilling them. And there was a part of them that kind of laughed. One lady laughed. Another person didn't want to talk because she felt guilty. And but one was laughing and didn't care. And I'm thinking, isn't it interesting? One's feeling guilty, but still not stopping it. Instead of calling him and say, can I order something and pick it up, and get an order that way or something, and just go in there and get back. Somebody that's inspired by what they do doesn't want to take a break. I have a program I call the Breakthrough Experience, and I do it. It's 26 hours over a weekend. and people go, do we get a break? I said, no, the purpose of the program is called Breakthrough because there's no break through the whole thing.
Oh, I love it.
Just for fun. I'm a bad joker. And I got the worst jokes. Chat GPT calls me the king of bad jokes. So at least I'm royalty, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, people laughed. They said, "Would you take a break?" I said, "I don't think about a break. It's the farthest thing from my mind, a break, when I'm engaged and inspired by what I do. I don't even notice time." And they go, "Well, we got to have a break." And I said, "Okay, well then go take a break." But when you're really engaged, you don't do that. I got interviewed by the Wall Street Journal a number of years ago. And there's this tall, lanky lady that came to me and she says, "Dr. Demartini, there's a new research that points out this." Now, can you imagine this? I mean, you're savvy. You know what I'm. Imagine this. She says the research points that people can only work 45 minutes and they need a 15-minute break every hour.
What'd you say?
And I said, "Ma'am, I will not support that. That's BS. That's for people that are disengaged, uninspired." When people are inspired by what they do, the last thing they think about is a break. The only reason they go take a break,
time goes like this.
Yeah,
right.
Time disappears.
Time disappears. You don't even think about time.
You're not even aware, and you only stop when you really got to pee, or really got to stop and use a restroom or something, or really have gone for hours without some food or something. Then you take a break, but you're engaged in what you're doing. You don't think about it. You don't take a break. Well, it's 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to have a break in 10 minutes. And I'm watching the clock and I go, "Oh, now I can take a break." And I'm going to stretch that at coffee at Starbucks. That's for people that are disengaged. And that costs society, companies, and people's lives. And they go there and they have to have sugar to kick in. And they take 9 to 25 teaspoons of sugar to get this high and then crash 2 hours later.
And then I was going to say, and then you just crash.
And you go back and do another hit.
Down productivity worse.
Yeah, because of the debauchery of sugar. Sugar is one of the biggest addicting compounds there is. So that's part of the amygdala's response because you're not engaged. But when somebody's really, 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 really engaged, they don't have that type mentality. Anyway, I just drilled this lady and gave her hell. And I said, "Listen," I said, "I don't want my name on something if you're going to publish that, because I am absolutely against that idea. I believe that people deserve to have a break when they really require a break. But I don't think we're sheep. I think we're shepherds. And I'd rather go and get people who are engaged and inspired by their work. And then when they won't want to take a break until they need it, and they'll go take a break. It's not necessarily structured. And now you have to take a break or that kind of stuff. Because if you're having to get away and escape what you're doing, you're not inspired by it."
Did she publish the story?
She did.
You in it?
She did it with integrity.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
She thought it was kind of weird anyway. She said, "Well, I did think that was kind of weird." I'm thinking, how can you have a productive society if you're taking a break every 15 minutes and people are sneaking an extra 5 minutes on it? That means you're only getting you're losing a third of your work that way. That's crazy.
And I think that's important for our listeners, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're running a team, middle manager, you got to be self-aware and looking around. Are people inspired to be there, or are they checking in, checking out, and finding any excuse possible not to do the work? And part of it is, you got to make sure that you're helping to set them up with success by being Dr. Demartini, like you were saying earlier, being very clear on what's going on.
Clear about what you want done and care enough about another human being to make sure that they're going to be inspired by the work. If you do,
people first leader.
You help them get what they want, they help you get what you want. If you help them live a fulfilled life, they help you. That works. That's been sustainable fair exchange and reciprocity like that, and maximizing utility like that has been the cornerstone of great enterprises for centuries. And even in Hubert Hal Bancroft's The Book of Wealth, he describes that. He said the people that end up very extremely fortunate are people that by divine providence and human sovereignty feel destined to serve vast numbers of people. They are on a mission to serve. And they're on a mission to raise the standard, to elevate the standard so everybody has a motive to keep elevating what they're capable of doing. Those are incredible things. And they've transcended the illusion of good and bad associated with money. It's beyond good and bad. It's like Nietzsche's beyond good and evil. It's beyond that. It's a measurement stick of how efficient they are at serving people. It's not a good and bad thing about money. It's just a measurement of the service that you're providing.
Well, here's the thing. I know we got to wrap up pretty soon. Name of my show is the Learn It All podcast. You and I talked about this before we go on. I mean, I can't leave talk about inspiration. I mean, you went from being told you could never, in first grade, never learn how to read and write, to reading 31,000 books or something like that. I mean, what drove you? I know we don't have much time here, but what drove you and inspired you to make that happen?
I was 18 years old on the North Shore of Oahu, long-haired, hippie, bearded guy surfing big waves. I left home when I was 13. I went surfing. I'm now 17, a week before my 18th birthday, November 18th, 1972. And I nearly died surfing Lani Kea on about a 40-foot wave. And in the recovery of that process, I was led to a health food store and then a yoga class. And I went to this yoga class, and Paul C. Bragg was the guest speaker there. And he spoke in such a way that night that he made me think that maybe someday I could be an intelligent individual. I could become intelligent. I never thought I'd be intelligent. I thought I'd be smart. I was intelligent surf-wise, but not book-wise, because I could not read and I could not get pronounce and a speech impediment and everything else. You couldn't see it today because that's friggin' thousands of hours of difference. But at the time, I had to have a guy named Jackie Roy read for me. When we go places, he would have to read for me because I couldn't read. And that night, my life changed and I got inspired. And I saw a possibility, and I saw a vision of me standing on a balcony speaking articulately in front of 1 million people, which is painted and it sits in my office today, that painting. And I started on a journey to try to go back and try to learn how to read and study and do things. I went back and I flew to LA, hitchhiked back to Texas where my parents lived. I took a GED and I eventually passed. And I tried to go back to school and I failed. And I got a 27 on a test and I did a 72 to pass. And I remember crying on the drive home, and I curled up in a fetal position on the bottom of a Bible stand at my mom's living room. And I was really sulking, and I was thinking, I guess I'll never read, write, or communicate. I was just reciting what the teacher said. My mom came home from shopping. She came in there and said, "What happened, son? What's wrong? What are you crying about?" I said, "Mom, I blew the test. I guess I'll never be able to do read, write, and speak and stuff." And she looked at me and she said, "Son, whether you become a great teacher, healer, and philosopher like you dream, whether you go back and ride giant waves like you've done, or return to the streets and panhandle as a bum, which you've also done, I just want to let you know your father and I are going to love you no matter what you do. We just love you." When she said that, my hand went into a fist. I looked up and I saw that vision I saw with Paul Bragg that night. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading and studying and learning. I'm going to master this thing called speaking, teaching, philosophy. And I'm going to do whatever it takes, travel whatever distance, pay whatever price to give my service of love across this planet. I'm not going to let any human being on the face of the earth stop me, not even myself. I hugged my mom. I went into my room. I got a Funk and Wagnall's dictionary, which I still have, the original one. It's covered in tape now. And I made a commitment to memorizing 30 words a day. And I wrote the words out, spelled them 20 times, each 30 words. I pronounced them 20 times. I put them in a sentence 20 times. I made sure I understood the meanings 20 times. And she tested me every night on 30 words. And I grew my vocabulary 20,000 words in 2 years. And I went from the bottom of the class to the top of the class. And then I asked every single day what worked, what didn't work in reading. And I developed new systems on speed reading and developing reading and learning how to read. And I just started excelling. And then I started reading 20 hours a day. If I wasn't in school, I was reading on the way to school, on the way back to school, reading everywhere I could to try to catch up with all the other kids. And that led me to study 100 different books in 300 different disciplines now. Because I figured if I could study 100 books on a discipline, that would give me a PhD. And I wanted to have a polymathic, autodidactic individual with a photographic, autographic memory. That was my goal and dream, and I worked on it, and boom, 31,000 books later.
When your mom told you that she would love you no matter what, her and your dad, I mean, what an amazing thing, and also what you learned from Paul C. Bragg, at that point, did you say, this is what I want to be the rest of my life?
I knew the night I met Paul Bragg.
Millions of now, right? I mean, you're helping millions of people.
Well, we've reached billions. We do millions in one podcast,
Yeah.
But I knew the night at Paul Prague. Do I have a second to show you something?
Yeah, of course.
Let me see if I can find this.
I want to see a picture of the dictionary.
I'll show you the picture of the
take your time.
Vision. The picture of the vision that I had the night I met Paul Bragg.
Love it.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
That was painted by Andrew Tischler. The back of it, in the backdrop, is a major iconic building from every major city around the world. And the name of the painting is A Man on a Mission with a Vision and a Message.
Awesome.
So that's what I saw when I was 17. And I've spoken in 161 countries today.
Unbelievable. Love it. I don't really know what to say. I mean, this has been awesome. Is there any final message you want to leave our audience with?
The magnificence of who you are, your authentic self, is far greater than any fantasies you'll impose on yourself that arise from your comparison to other people that you admire. Don't be second at being somebody else. Don't live in the shadows of anyone. Stand on the shoulders as Newton did and see a greater horizon. Ed Tullison told me many years ago, don't ever live where you can't see the farthest horizon. That's why I live at sea, or I live in the top of mountains, or way up in tall buildings. I want to make sure that there's nothing artificial blocking my natural view and vision. So give yourself permission to shine, not shrink. Do something extraordinary, not ordinary, because the authentic you is somebody special that has a mission and a message and a vision. So don't let anything on the outside world interfere with what's on the inside. I said on the movie The Secret many years ago, 20 years ago, when the voice and the vision on the inside is greater than all opinions on the outside, you begin to master your life.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Demartini. Listeners, here's what I want you to do. If you're not living, if you're not aligned with, if your words aren't aligned and congruent and fluent with who you want to be and what you're doing, you got to go to his website. I mean, there's going to be a link in the show notes. Do the value test. I did it yesterday. It's great. It's easy. You got videos up there explaining what you're going to be going through. It's a great process, and that's a great starting point. Where else, Dr. Demartini, can our listeners connect with you at?
Just if they go to my website, drdemartini.com, or if they want to learn a little bit more, I've been involved in movies. I've just filmed my 61st movie the other day. There's a movie that came out in November, 5 movies back, called The Breakthrough Movie, Demartini. Okay. Just Breakthrough Movie. And it's an inspiring movie that will probably bring tears. I don't know if anybody's listened to or watched it that didn't have tears in the eyes. It's about your potential and what you're capable of doing. It's a really cool little thing, but it's called Breakthrough Movie, Demartini.
All right, we'll put that in the show notes as well. And I got to give a shout out to my buddy, Johnny Pardo, who introduced me to Dr. Demartini. And so I owe him big time. And until next time, everybody, stay curious, keep learning. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Demartini.
Thank you.
You want everybody thinking. And what you're thinking about is, what's our purpose? How are we doing in achieving that purpose? You have to accept that if you're the director and you've got a general manager working for you, he or she might not do it the way you would do it, but they will do it.